Welcome back to the Knitting Depot. Today's project, we are going to learn how to make an adult hat, winter hat, or I sometimes sell them as a campfire beanie or a just a folded brim hat. What you're going to need for today's supplies is a pair of size 8 16-inch circular needles. You'll want 2 sets of these because at the end I'm going to show you the option of knitting on 2 circular needles to do your decreases to make the top of the hat instead of 4 double-pointed needles. You're certainly welcome to use the 4 double-pointed needles. It will be exactly the same pattern. You're going to need a stitch marker because we're going to be knitting in the round. You will need some sort of a yarn needle so that we can weave in our ends when we're done. And so I use the size 8 needles because I'm using a worsted weight yarn for this pattern. So you can use any worsted weight that you choose. This is Lion Brand's Heartland yarn. Okay, so to begin, you are going to cast on 80 stitches and you will then join in the round. I use the long tail cast on. I will link my video to how to learn and do the long tail cast on in case you haven't done that before. I just prefer that method. It gives you a nice, neat edge to your hat. Then you will do knit 4, purl 4 all the way around for as long as you want the brim. Now this part is going to fold up onto the main part of the hat. So I like mine around the same. It's just about 2 inches. You can make it smaller. You could make it larger if you want. It's entirely up to you. Some people like the brim to be folded up onto more of the brim itself. I just prefer this, and it will fold up on top of the straight stockinette stitch. So knit 4, purl 4 all the way around for about 2 inches. And then from there, we are going to just knit all the way around until your piece measures about 7 or 8 inches from your cast on edge. It depends on who you're making it for, how big you want it to be, or if you want a little bit at the top to slouch, you can make it a little bit bigger. This hat is pretty stretchy. It fits most. If you want to alter it and make it larger, you certainly can do that. You'd want to do that in a multiple of 8. So you would knit or cast on stitches a minimum of 80, a multiple of 8. It's a very adaptable pattern. And then once you have knit your brim, we just simply, this is my favorite part of the knitting, I call this my yoga knitting, and you're simply just knitting all the way around. These are really fun to make and give as gifts. Put them in stockings for the holidays. They're great to make. You can make them with different colors if you want to knit a few rows and then change colors. You certainly can. Sometimes I'll use my scraps and just make a completely multicolor hat. It's kind of fun. I have a big bucket of hats that I put by my door in the winter so that if anyone needs hats, I also put mittens in there if they're going out to shovel, or we have a new puppy in the household, so if we're going out to take the dog for a walk or to do his business, then someone might need some gloves and a hat. So I throw any hats that I'm not making as gifts or making to sell. Then I throw them in the bucket there, and then people can take them as they need them. And sometimes I'll make my cowls. I'll link the pattern and the video to those. Sometimes I throw those in the bucket near the door as well. Depends. I live in New England and it gets very cold. Although this has been a brutal summer, it's been so hot and dry. And we're finally starting to get some cool nights. And I'm really looking forward to the cooler weather where we might need a hat to go out. Especially, hopefully we'll get some snow this year. Okay, so you'll just keep knitting all the way around. So there's our knit 4, purl 4, and here's our beginning to the body of the hat. So I'm going to continue knitting this off camera until I have my 7 or 8 inches. And I just forgot to mention one more thing. You can also adapt this so that if you didn't want to do knit 4, purl 4, you can do knit 2, purl 2 to make this a little smaller of a contrast. So you could do the knit 2, purl 2 as well. It's 80 stitches, which is even. If you needed to increase it from the 80, you would do a multiple of 4 instead of the multiple of 8. And I will also have the pattern linked in the comments. And I might put it on Ravelry. I'll put a link there if I do, but I will most likely just leave it in the comments so you can just look at the pattern. I'm going to continue knitting off camera. I'll see you shortly. Okay, so we have completed our brim and we've completed the body of our hat. I'm at about 8 inches, as you can see. And we measure from the cast on edge to where our current knitting is. And now what we're going to do is we are going to change over to our second set of size 8 16-inch circular needles. There's another way to do this where you can use one set of circular needles with a longer cord in between, and I will have another video on that. So we have 80 stitches on here, so what we're going to do is we're going to knit one more row, and we are going to take our stitches and we're going to move them to our other set of needles. So we'll knit our 40 stitches. You could do a decrease row with this as well. I just find it easier just to do a straight knitting row. Ten. There's 20. And it doesn't matter if you get it exact. You don't have to have the exact number of stitches on each needle, at least for this pattern. Okay, so we should have 40 stitches on each needle. And then you can just pull your needles, basically so that your knitting is resting on 2 sets of needles. So you have 4 needles to work with, just like you would if you were using double pointed needles. But there's 2 sets of needles, and as always, you're only going to be knitting with 2. So we just finished and we put these needles right here on. And I had dropped my stitch marker just so it wasn't confusing. We're going to put that back on though. Now we're going to switch over to our second set of circular needles. And here they are. You want to make sure you have the needles for the one set. You don't want to be knitting from one set of needles to the other set. You want to be knitting on the same one. So you're going to slide this onto your left-hand needle. Use the other side of that needle, and then you're going to knit the remaining stitches on this needle. Now the trick to this is when you do your first stitch on each end of this, you want to just make sure you pull it a little bit tight. And just make sure those are staying on where they should. And then as soon as we do this round, we're going to do our first decrease round. And the point of doing the 2 circular needles is just like double pointed needles, where you can knit a very small circumference or tube, or in this example, the crown of a hat. Whereas on straight knitting needles, you can't do that. You would have to seam up the side because, you know, obviously you're knitting flat. Okay, there we go. I'll pull this back just a little bit. And we are back at the beginning. So we've done one, excuse me, one side, the back side. Now we're going to add our stitch marker back in. So our first decrease round rather is going to be knit 8 and knit 2 together. And we're going to repeat that all the way around. So again, we are on the next set of needles. Make sure you have the one, excuse me, sorry, I'm losing my voice. You want to make sure you have the needles from the same cord when you knit this. So we'll knit 2 there. I'm going to place my stitch marker back on so we know this is the beginning of the round. And we're going to knit 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we will knit 2 together. And then we will knit 8. And knit 2 together. Now you could keep going on your one set of circular needles for the first several rounds of your decrease for this pattern, and then switch over to your double pointed. I just wanted to give you some practice working with the double point or with the 2 circular needles. So now we'll knit 8 again. We knit 2 together, and I just keep pushing my stitches up onto this needle. And then we knit 2 together. Okay. And then we just flip it around, pick up our other set, and then we start with a knit 8 because we ended with a knit 2 together. And again, make sure you have the correct needle. And make sure you pull this stitch a little bit tight. Knit 2 together. Hang on. Sometimes I have to take my rings off because sometimes they pull on my knitting. Four, 5, 6, 7. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's my knit 2 together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we're going to knit 2 together. Oops. Knit 2 together. And then we're going to end on a knit 2 together. Okay. And pull your needles and turn your work. And we're back at our beginning. And as you can see, we are knitting. We're still knitting in the round, but we're doing it on 2 circular needles. So in this row, we are going to just straight knit. And then in the next round, we're going to knit 7 and knit 2 together. So I'm going to do this knit round off camera, and then I'll be back and we will do our knit 7 and knit 2 together. See you in a minute. Okay, now that we've knitted all the way around, we're going to do our knit 7, knit 2 together. And I'm on my first needle. Sometimes your needle gets in the way when you're first starting, but it will eventually move. Here's our knit 7, knit 2 together. Then we knit 7, 2 together. And we'll continue to do this all the way around. Knit 7, knit 2 together, knit 7, knit 2 together until you come back to your first stitch of the round. Then you're going to knit every stitch all the way around. I'll continue that off camera and I'll meet you back here. Okay, for our next row, we're going to knit 6, knit 2 together all the way around to complete that row. And then the next row, we're going to knit a complete round, all the stitches. That will be our last row to have the 2-row repeat of knit so many, knit 2 together, and then knit a plain round. I'm going to complete the knit 6, knit 2 together, and then the knit row off camera, and I'll see you back here in a minute. Okay, now we've completed our knit 8, knit 2 together, knit 7, knit 2 together, knit 6, knit 2 together, and in between each of those we did a plain round of knitting. And as you can see, you are starting to see your decrease here, and it's beginning to form the crown of the hat. You can see our knitting is kind of starting to curve. So for the next several rounds, we're going to knit the decrease, but we're going to skip the knit round in between. So we're going to knit 5, knit 2 together all the way around, knit 4, knit 2 together all the way around, knit 3, knit 2 together all the way around, knit 2, knit 2 together all the way around, and knit 1, knit 2 together all the way around. So I'm going to complete all of those, and I will come back and check in with you, and then we will complete our crown of our hat. See you soon. Okay, so I wanted to come back on and show you this. So I did my knit 5, knit 2 together, but it doesn't end evenly at this point. So I'm going to knit my 2, And then I'll drop my needles as before. And then I'll just continue and knit 3. And I'll continue and knit 3 and then do my knit 2 together. I'll see you in a few minutes. Also, if you have any remaining stitches on one needle when you're doing the knit, so many knit 2 together, just knit those. Like if they're at the end of a round and you have 2 extra stitches, just knit those remaining stitches. It won't matter to the pattern. Okay, so you should be left with 8 or 9 stitches. I may have missed something along the way because I'm left with 9 stitches. But we've done our knit 1, knit 2 together. That was our last round that we did. And as you can see, the hat has started to form the crown. And our last row of knitting is going to be our knit 2 together all the way around. So we're going to knit 2, slide your marker, knit 2. It may be a little tight in places, depending on how tightly you knit. Knit 2. Okay, so now we have knit 3 here. So we're going to knit 2. And then I'm going to slide this one on there. And I'm just going to put it on, whoops, my needles that I'm going to be using now. So if you have a stitch left that it's not going to form the knit 2, just put it on your other needle. Okay, sorry about that. My camera died. So if you have an odd number of stitches here, like I do, I have 9 for some reason, you don't have to worry about moving it to the other needle. You could have knit 3 on the other side, or like I'm going to do, I'm going to knit 3 on the other end of this, or I may just leave it because it's not going to matter. So we're going to knit 2 together every stitch, and we'll end with an odd number of stitches because on the very last one, I'm going to knit the last stitch. Okay, so we've completed all of our knitting, and this is what the crown of our hat will look like. And we will come back in 1 minute. We are going to cut our tail to about 12 inches. We're going to take a yarn needle and remove our needles and put our stitches on some threads, or the yarn rather, cinch it closed, and weave our ends in, and our hat will be complete. Okay, so I'm just gonna cut my yarn about 12 inches here. It doesn't have to be exact, just don't cut it too short. You need enough to cinch the hat closed and weave in your ends. So I'm going to turn my head around so it may be easier for you to see. I'm going to thread my yarn into my yarn needle. And then we're going to transfer the stitches from our needles onto our yarn. I think it might be easier if I flip it around to the other side. I'm left-handed, so bear with me. And I just move my stitches up onto my needle. And then I just take each stitch off one at a time. Take my stitch marker out as we don't need it right now. And you're just going to move them onto the needle and pull your yarn through. And we'll do the same thing on this side. Slide your stitches onto your needle. Pull your yarn through, and you can cinch it closed. And just so you can see, this is how our top of our hat looks, which is very neat and very pretty. And then I just like to go in a couple of stitches just to complete it. Make sure it's nice and tight. So I've gone around basically a second time. And then I'm going to stick my needle down through into the center of the hat, right through that hole in the middle. And I'm going to weave in my end from the inside. And again, you can go around on the inside here and just weave your end in. And I just try to go both directions so it doesn't come out. You just want to make sure you're not coming through on the other side, because you don't want to see that tail coming through, especially if you're doing any kind of multicolor pattern or color work. You don't want to see that. And sometimes I just double check. Sometimes I feel like I've pulled it through. And I like to tie a knot. If you wanted to put a pom-pom on this, you could make a pom-pom or buy a pom-pom, and you can actually use your tail to secure the pom-pom here. Or you could put a button on the inside or on the outside to attach the elastic. Some pom-poms come with elastic, and you can attach the pom-pom. I'm gonna wear this hat, so I don't really generally wear hats with pom-poms. Okay, and then we will trim our end there. And then we have one more to weave in. And so I generally just go back and forth here a little bit. Again, if you're doing any kind of color work, you want to make sure you're weaving into the same color so that it's kind of invisible. And then I go through to the other side, make sure it's looking okay. And then I'll come back up and through. If you're going to wear it as a rolled brim, you can do it this way and then come back down this way and you won't even see it. And I just like to make sure mine is really secure, because sometimes, you know, winter hats get all wet and you might throw them in the washer or dryer, depending on what you're making it out of. If you're making a 100% wool hat, I don't recommend putting it in the dryer. You may want to hand wash it, lie flat to dry if you need to. Okay. And we have completed our rolled brim hat. Oh, finished on 2 circular needles. There's both sides, and you can see the crown of our hat. I'll also include a picture of someone wearing it so you can see what it looks like. And it also goes really well with the 4x4 knit 4 purl 4 ribbed cowl that we made, and also the fingerless gloves that we made. You can make them all in the same color that I did. You can make them in a variegated pattern yarn or a self-striping yarn, and it's really fun. I make a lot of these. They're fun. I sell them. I give them as gifts. Like I said, I put them at the door in case anybody needs a hat or gloves when they're going outside. I hope you enjoyed knitting this with me. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them. If you decide to make this, please feel free to share some pictures over on our Facebook page, The Knitting Depot. I would love to see what you're doing. And as always, happy knitting, and I'll see you in the next video.